You may have to,
What's that about?
well, um, I was playing with a green screen the other day that I just got. I have to do, yeah, there, I shut it off. Um, okay, that's better. I have to do an American Daffodil Society Zoom meeting where I'm a presenter for an hour.
Ooh,
And it's for kids on Halloween, which I don't know what kid's going to sign up. But anyway, we've been doing our whole fall board meeting virtually. So it's almost every weekend there's been some either presenter or workshop, for an hour, just if people want to pop in. And we've had, 85 or 90 people on a lot of these things.
wow.
So I'm now youth chair for the society. So they asked me if I would do something for kids and membership. And of course, it's Halloween. I had to get a new costume and hat. And I got to go to the attic and get some daffodils out. And I'm going to teach them how to plant a pot for the winter. Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. So I thought because of the kids, I should really get a green screen and get it all, with pictures or something. And then I have to do another one November 8th, which is all about judging, which is fine. There's 4 of us doing that. I only have to talk for 10 minutes on that one. But still, do anybody want to see my collection of service plates? I don't think so, because, those are from all different restaurants. And
Wow.
obviously I'm in my dining room in the morning when it's dark. This has the best light. But anyway.
I gotta have your light in the kitchen on this morning.
Yeah. Sometimes my kitchen works too. But anyway, look at this. Okay, here we go. I was on the boat last night. I went away for the first time since March.
I've done one overnight since March. That was last week. I had to go over for a medical appointment in Hyannis.
Yeah. Well, I just went to my daughter's, so that was safe, and stayed with her for the weekend.
Yeah, I went away for the day about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Pick up my goddaughter at the airport, bring her back so she couldn't take the bus because we were worried about her taking the bus down.
Well, there is no bus
Well,
other
I think
than
every
Peter
3
Pan.
hours.
It's Plymouth Brockton's not running at all.
Well, I think it's like Peter Pan that's running every 3 hours.
Yeah, and my daughter lives off near Rockland, and she's in Abington, but that's the closest. And I can take normally P&B every hour and get off at Rockland, and then she drives 2 miles, 3 miles, and picks me up. So with no P&B, and the only bus with Peter Pan leaves Hyannis at 6 a.m. that stops in Rockland, Plymouth and Rockland, because it's on its way to Logan. So it's to pick up people. So I rented a car.
Yeah, that's what I did too. And couldn't get the car off because I was more worried about trying to deal with it.
Yeah.
But, it was fine.
Well, I went Friday, so I couldn't get my car off either. So
Yeah, it was a Friday before a weekend.
yeah, but it was nice to do some retail therapy for a little bit.
Morning.
Hi,
Hi,
Karen.
Karen.
Hi, Karen.
So the only committee member who is not planning to be here will be Peter, because he's got a simultaneous meeting somewhere else. Everybody else confirmed.
Was it busy yesterday, David?
2 people,
Wow.
and I think about 7 or 8 phone calls. And one of the calls was a gentleman looking to find out what events were happening in May and September. Wait for it. 2022.
Oh, good.
Oh. Well, if he finds out, have him let us know.
So I said to him, call us back at Oh, shit. Damn it.
Nope, David unplugged himself. David, come back.
I will.
I was on a call yesterday with the cultural organizations and Joe Hale asked, who thinks we're gonna be normal next summer? And the only person who put his hand up was Joe Hale.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah.
Gotta make sure I don't add that.
I wonder where everybody is. Sleeping in.
Yeah. Now I know where the video thing is.
There's Josh.
Hey, Josh.
Hey,
Good morning.
having a
I
little
did-
trouble with my browser.
Nothing worse than an ornery browser. I had to buy those Comcast the pod extenders for my house.
Oh, yeah, they were talking to me about those too,
Well, working so much at home,
but right.
and I basically have two rooms, upstairs and downstairs, that I have desks. So I will admit they seem to work.
Yeah, I've got 3 at my house, and I
Yeah.
went to the Comcast place yesterday afternoon, and they were sold out of them. And they said you got to go buy them online. And they
Oh,
were
Yeah.
sold online.
Yeah. They were very easy to install and link. You just have the app. It was almost scary. You load up this app and sign in, and then you hold your phone over the little thing in the wall,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden it says connected, because it bounces off the Wi-Fi on your phone. It was
Technology is
well, it was
creepy.
Yeah, it was creepy. I wanted someone to come in and plug them in and make them work. And
all right. Are we good to go, Jan?
I don't think we have a quorum.
No,
No.
I have to call people.
Who are we missing? Sharon and Thayer.
there,
Yeah, I talked to both of them. They said they're planning to be here.
And Orla said she was gonna be late, so I have no idea.
And Angela said she was going to, she emailed saying, thanks for the reminder. But Peter is, as I said, tied up with another meeting at the same time. So let me call.
do you want me to text there?
Yeah, can you? And I'll call
Sure.
Sharon.
We just need one more.
Sharon's coming.
Okay, I texted there. See if she answers.
Here she is.
There. I just texted you.
Sorry, I couldn't figure out, like, hi.
Hello. Okay. Well, we do have a quorum if you want to start, Josh.
All right. Motion to convene this meeting. 1 second. Of the Visitors Services Advisory Council.
Second.
Great. All right, I do have to read the remote script for as the beginning, first thing we do here. So as a preliminary matter, this is Joshua Gray, Chair of the Visitor Services Advisory Council. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me.
Yes.
Do we have Christy join us? Did Christy Ferrantella join us?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Hey, Christy.
Hi.
Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. And then let's see. Mary Melody,
Here.
Thayer Hale,
Here.
Sharon Quigley, Janet Schulte,
Here.
David Sharp.
Here.
Karen.
Oh, I'm sorry, Theron.
Here.
Oh, Karen. Yep, sorry. And we have speakers, but they're not on yet. Good morning. This open meeting of the Visitor Service Advisory Council is being conducted remotely, consistent with the Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so the public can follow along with the deliberation of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. For this meeting of the Visitor Services Advisory Council is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's website identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials have been provided. Members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda, but before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, Joshua Gray, will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called further. Excuse me. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and say your name before speaking. Please do not have any conversations except through the chair. All right. What's the first thing on the agenda?
Approval of the minutes.
All right. Sorry, do you have those, Janet, handy?
I have them in front of me, yes.
All right, so we're just looking to approve those minutes.
Yes, from September.
Motion to approve September minutes.
So moved.
All right, minutes passed.
I think you got to take a vote.
Yeah, you gotta take a roll call.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the vote to approve the September minutes. All right.
Karen Maycumber, yes.
Okay, so moved.
Aye. There.
Thank you.
Everybody's got to verbally approve.
So
Oh.
moved.
All right, Sharon, Karen,
Aye.
Thayer,
Aye.
and I.
And Sharon.
Oh, I
Approved.
did say Sharon, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Janet, do you want to, I'm pulling up the agenda now, sorry. Do you want to start?
Yeah, the next item, I want to say hi to Angela and thanks for joining us. And
Yes,
we'll
hi,
get right
Angela.
to you in a few minutes when we finish this business part. The Visitor Services Advisory Committee report covers last year, so it would have been from July 1, 2019 to June 30th, 2020, which is why it mentions only that we had 4 meetings in 2019 and then COVID hit. Are there any changes to it? This is what goes into the town warrant or the town annual report. Anybody got any,
I don't have any changes.
you want to take a vote on it then?
To approve what we submit?
Yeah,
All right. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thayer,
Aye.
can you hear me, Thayer?
Yes.
Oh.
Aye.
Okay,
Karen says aye.
great.
Aye, Mary.
All right. Sharon said aye, Mary said aye, Thayer said aye. All right,
okay, I'll submit it tomorrow.
perfect.
Do we want to go to Angela next and then we can go to our business items at the end?
Sure.
Yeah, before you do that, I did get an email from Orla, and it sounds like she can't make it.
Okay.
So Angela, let me introduce what the topic is. Last month when we met for the first time since last December, we reviewed some statistics from the visitor services and saw a tremendous increase in the restaurant list being hit every Monday, where we assumed our assumption was that people were looking out Monday to figure out where they were going to come on the coming weekend because they wanted to know who was open. We thought that was interesting data. I shared it with you and Orla and a couple other folks in the restaurant group. And some of the innkeepers here on the committee too had some thoughts about the restaurant experience, but it's very clear to us that fine dining is part of the visitor experience on the island. And we've never had that opportunity to talk to restaurant folks about it. So I guess I'll toss it out to the other members of the committee, see if they have anything to add, and invite Angela to speak about it.
So, can you all hear me? I'm having trouble with my microphone.
Yep.
Okay, great. Sorry. And I apologize for being late. Angela, thank you for joining us. You may or may not know who I am, but okay, I was formerly the concierge over at the Nantucket for the past 4 years and spent 80% of my time trying to get people fed on the island. And this year was particularly challenging for us who were trying to seat guests in the restaurants. I imagine it was exponentially challenging for those of you trying to feed them. I was very curious about what the summer experience was like from your side. I know the guests were so grateful, and the restaurants were really something that many of our hotel guests were inquiring about long before they arrived, as they normally do, but many of them wouldn't come unless the restaurants were going to be open. I had people, one guest in particular who comes every year, lives in the Hamptons, lives in the city, and she said, I can go to the beach in the Hamptons. I don't, I want to go out to dinner in the Nantucket. So the restaurants, I think, are such a critical piece of the tourist experience here. And I would love to hear more and learn. I think we just need to work very closely with the restaurants and the shops, because that's part of what makes us unique, I think, is our fine dining. So I'm curious to hear what your experience was like.
Well, in one word, maybe bonkers would be my most accurate, polite catch-all term that I must have used, I don't know, thousands of times. At different moments, it meant different things. But my personal, first and foremost, I truly wanted to thank you all, because I think that there have been a lot of times where the kind of the surrealness of the hours of restaurateurs excludes us from a lot of dialogues. And I think that that's a huge challenge on this island and in every community, because we live in hours that are a night shift. And so for us to have cohesive, collaborative conversations, that doesn't often happen. Generally, the time when restaurateurs are tapped is one of two things: for donations and to support non-for-profits, for-profits, whatever you want to call it. That we get that conversation, and then the other conversation we get is when there are challenges with any members of our community. There's a sense that it's the whole group. And so I think that there was a huge shift in that lens. And that lens was, I think, really cleared this summer, where I think that the realities of restaurants and the challenges restaurants face on every season became more part of the dialogue, and it just became more illuminated. And I think that our role in the fabric of the community became something that became more evident. And the numbers you have didn't surprise me at all. In fact, I know what the tracking of my social media and my engagement level, and I don't do anything in print any longer, and I haven't for 2 years. And I stopped doing print things other than one that there was some pressure to do for some time, because I just saw no ROI on it. And so you're 100% accurate with the inquiries. I get inquiries on every form of communication imaginable. I have 4 Instagram accounts. I have 4 Facebook accounts, which I would love to delete all of those, but the Instagram is fantastic. And it is the single most impactful way for me to connect with our clientele, to connect with clientele that potentially and guests from all over the world. The Instagram live stories that I do have thousands of impressions, and I can tell where they're from. I can see upticks in my reservations, in our product mix. I analyze everything, and I have for some time, because I have children, adults, others, whatever you want to call them now, humans who are in their late 20s. And so I've had the ability to go through the arc of that kind of technology and the implementation of it and activation of it to impact my business. When we opened Corazon, Facebook was really just kind of coming on the scene for businesses. And I had one of the first Facebook accounts for Corazon on Island, and everything we did at Corazon was through that Facebook. It was crazy. I still get messages from people, but it's just interesting. And so I think, you know, to your question about this specific season, I've said many times, and this is not to ever diminish anyone who's had a traumatic brain injury, but navigating this season really was as if we had a traumatic brain injury, because we knew what we were going to do, what we wanted to do. We had to rethink every aspect and relearn every aspect of every interaction with our guests. We stripped down, we didn't open until June 26th. We spent 2 months stripping down every single guest experience, every single team member experience, from the moment they walked in the door to the moment that they started their workstation, to the moment they interacted with the guest, to before they arrived. We had to rethink and reimagine and evolve. Pivoting, zero interest in pivoting. 1 foot in the past is not relevant for any of us any longer. So we really took an onward, active, really mindful moment every single day. Every day we talked about, what did we learn? What do we need to correct? And it was immediate corrections. And I had the benefit of a couple of organizations that I belong to that I have restaurateurs, particularly women in hospitality from all over the world. And I was on every Zoom call I could be on. I was collaborating, learning. I think that was the biggest thing for me, was really learning. I talked to people in other resort communities, other people who have tourism as a leader of their, economy. And I just tried to really be open to learning and open to taking every interaction with, other people in hospitality as being vital to our very survival. And we ended up, when we decided to close, it was a combination of staffing, weather. I can't say that enough. And also safety, because we really felt that we were at that point where we felt we were pushing the envelope too far if we stayed open. This past weekend, with so many people on island, with the surging cases, we felt very uncomfortable going indoors. And I've been very measured about speaking about that publicly, because I don't want to negatively impact anybody else in my community. But I feel that it is a very high risk situation for your team. And my decisions will always start with my team, because if my team is not safe, my team is going to put other people at risk. So that's kind of a nutshell. It's a lot of information, but it was a very broad kind of question.
Very broad question. Let me just ask you one more follow-up, and then I'll shut up and let someone else ask you. Thank you for feeding us. I know I certainly enjoyed the food, as always.
Thank you.
So you said that, I guess I have three follow-up questions. They're all sort of related. So after having gone through a season like this, were there things that you implemented that you think should stay, like the outdoor dining, or more takeout options? Or were there things as we head into the winter that were lessons learned that if the community could be more creative in some way, you think we could have extended your season or some of the other restaurateur seasons? Like, I don't know, maybe building and this is just a crazy.
Sure.
Yeah, but like putting a huge tent out and heating it somewhere like on Jetty's Beach, and having everybody have shared access to a space, or allowing more food trucks or more delivery. Is there something that as a community we can do to support the restaurateurs that you just didn't have a chance to implement this winter, but we might want to think about?
Well, I think this is it's a really wonderful question, because again, there's been a shift to collaboration that happened profoundly during this time. And before, there was a somewhat adversarial, strange disconnect that existed between different industries within our town, which was really unfortunate. So much time was talked about what wasn't possible instead of talking about what is possible. I never have conversations with my team about what's not possible. That is no interest to me. It's irrelevant. I want people to talk about possibilities, because possibilities are where the true vulnerability, looking at your business model, and where the magic is. So you can see where there are voids and opportunity. And yes, I think 100% moving forward, there are many things that could have been done that would have altered the trajectory of our season. However, we have to be really conscious of, and when I say we, I mean my business, of the reality of the weather. And tents, heaters, and weather on Nantucket, if we didn't have wind, all these things would be different conversations. But I think there has to be some real thought into the safety involved with these dynamics. So what I would hope, and I think restaurants, I 100% feel comfortable speaking for everyone, some really thoughtful, collaborative discussions about the outdoor dining and how to have that become part of the, I don't know that there were many people that didn't like the outdoor dining. I don't know if you all heard anyone who didn't like it. I think that it was a true game changer. I think it was also somewhat of a return to having Nantucket feel more welcoming and less exclusionary, because I think that was one of the kind of unintended silver linings of this, is that as you walked around town, though we couldn't be socially next to each other, I think that we had connecting points we would not have had if people were indoors. And I think that gave people hope. And I really feel that that's a priceless commodity right now. And so the more that we can give people a sense of hospitality and welcoming, even in a pandemic, that shows really the spirit of our community. So I feel that obviously the heater situation was a really tough situation because a lot of the restaurants were under the impression that heaters were coming via the town in a grant, and perhaps like hopeful listening that we all thought heaters were coming. And then we were reaching out to different people saying, are heaters coming? And then by the time we got the word that no heaters were coming, heaters were non-existent. And my husband and I spent $1,400 per heater ordering 3 heaters. And by the time they arrived, we had 1 week left in our season because they were back ordered. One of the 3 heaters arrived and didn't function. And so the impact of those 2 heaters was never enough to have any kind of return on investment. And yes, we have them for whatever the spring looks like, but I can tell you it was really very, very difficult as a business. We were making all of our decisions based on, strategy and trying not to have everything be reactionary. So I think having a really clear plan, we didn't get our outdoor seating, the first phase of it on the sidewalk. We didn't get that until, I want to say it was July 20th that we added the outdoor tables because not enough people were wearing masks. And I was very vocal about that on my Instagram stories and talking to our guests. And even when we started having guests sit on the sidewalk, guests were really uncomfortable. We had one really unfortunate interaction with a mask denier and a guest, and it was really troubling. And I had to call the police, and it was a whole thing where this guest really felt physically threatened by this man, and he was intoxicated and leaned over their table, and it was a whole thing. So those were unanticipated. It was navigating that on the fly, but then we ended up making the stanchions, and we did roping off, and we were all learning together. And then as far as us getting the street, we didn't get the tables on the street until the first week in August. So for us to get that the first week in August, I lost so much money this summer. The boarding house never opened. So we had about 30% of our normal annual revenues between the boarding house and the Pearl. So, and yes, we had less staffing, and we're still trying to figure out where it all ends at the end of the day. And then PPP, applying for that was, based on really bad information that we all collectively had, as far as the initial thought was this was going to be short term and you can only use numbers up until June. I mean, this conversation can kind of go all over the place. The bottom line is we now know a lot of stuff and that's the exciting part. So whatever next season is, all of us collectively are going into it with wisdom, and we had no wisdom at all. We were all kind of in this like dystopian, chaotic tornado at one time together, and we did the best that we could. And what we did was really extraordinary collectively, and we're so grateful for what we did. And that's a thing. I think that this is a moment of a lot of like gratitude, and I feel that to the town on a level that, quite frankly, in all the time I've lived here, I've never been more connected to the process of how things work and getting a window into maybe why there are some disconnects, and understanding with like empathy and compassion of why it takes time to do things, because there's so many different layers clearly to all the things that all of you do. But I think that there's now a lot of possibility that never existed, because I think people will take the time to not everything get to an 811. I think we can all have some now 411 conversations about how to navigate the 811 and the 911. And so maybe if we can maintain our navigation more in the 511 mode, that would be, this is all stuff I use with my team, because a lot of people, millennials particularly, do not understand that losing your phone is not a 911. So we recalibrate the codes on a daily basis. But no, I think outdoor dining 100%. But to have restaurants be viable, because the timeline I shared with you, can you imagine trying to staff that you go from having 9 tables, opening with 9 tables on a 7,000 square foot building, 9 outdoor tables, including, so with absolute 6-foot distancing, which we practiced to the point we had a stick and we did between chairs, not tables, not center tables, between chairs. And then we added time, we added space at certain points we thought were touch points between guests. But to do that, then have the trajectory of adding sidewalk tables, then adding street side tables. So we were stretching beyond, and we had 4 people in our kitchen and only the Pearl kitchen with my husband. So that all was really exhausting. It doesn't even capture it enough. So going into a new true evolution versus the pivoting, because the pivoting is not possible. But the evolution time is that's what's happening now. We're trying not to talk about the restaurant. We haven't made it one day yet, even though we've been closed for a week. But I think there's a lot of really amazing time for some collaborative thinking, watching what's happening in other cities right now. What are they doing for outdoor dining? What works, what doesn't work, having uniform guidelines, talking about music. I do think that, quite frankly, one of the best moves the town made, which was difficult for some and very controversial, was the midnight closure. The midnight closure was a game changer for our community. I truly feel if that didn't happen, we'd be in an entirely different compromised situation as a community right now. The health and well-being of our community would have been really very different than it is right now. So I think having conversations that can allow for budgeting and strategy instead of reaction and flip outs and all the other things that happen, I think it's going to make everyone's life easier. So I think getting some restaurant folks together and really talking about what worked, what didn't work, creating some equity between properties so you make sure that people don't all of a sudden have more seats than they ever had, and then you have somebody else who has no seats. I think that was a really unfortunate, unintended consequence of this time that made it really challenging for some people because their location didn't have possibilities of outdoor seating, or they had very limited outdoor seating. So jetties, I don't know if that would work from a weather point of view, but I think that coming up with a real plan and looking at the street overlay of what works and what doesn't work. I know Orla's not able to be on the call, but you know, Orla and I talked a lot as neighbors about what were possibilities in our neighborhood and what weren't. And, you know, there's some streets that offer really easy opportunities and others that don't. And I think, you know, trying to figure out in August is bonkers. And everybody did an extraordinary job, but it was really, it was hard to even squeeze out a half an hour to have a conversation that wasn't highly emotional when you're basically crying every day just because you're so exhausted and you're overwhelmed and afraid. And then you're trying to have like an appropriate linear conversation with someone about, I think we're going to put tables on a parking spot, and then people are shaming you on, you know, Facebook because you haven't painted the things that were, you know, dropped off on a Friday and it's Saturday morning and they have nothing better to do in their reality. Those things are really rough. And I know that other restaurateurs went through the same thing. And then you spend, you know, $4,000 to have trees and other things and build stanchions. The expenses of the restaurants, I think it's really important to look at what restaurants spent per restaurant to make these outdoor dining zones happen. And I know what my number is approaching, and it's staggering. And we valued every single seat and we needed it, but it's a huge, huge thing to think about.
Angela, this is Karen. I own the Sherburne Inn. So I will agree with Sharon that, you know, you're having dining is just critical to our business and our guests coming anywhere near us, and they always do ask about that. Your restaurant in particular, as a matter of fact. One thing that we found this year that was really difficult, I understand it completely, but going into next year, I think maybe all of us can try and think through how to make it work, is I had single travelers or couples who were looking to dine out. And of course, you know, with a lot of these tables now functioning for 6 folks or more, it was almost impossible. I had one gentleman who comes every year, came by himself, usually loves to dine out at the bars and things.
Yeah.
And he was eating in my garden every night, takeout, because he could not get a way. So I think that's just, it's an important part of the travel community that I'd love for us to be able to service. I don't know what the answer would be economically for you or anyone else, but I would love to see us address that at some point.
I think it's a really important point, Karen, and Deuces. We ended up having, once we reconfigured our seating, I want to say 25 times. That's probably less than, we were constantly reimagining, because I do it in open table. So I kept changing based on the demand. And it was wild to see this shift once September hit. And that's historical. We've always had a shift in September, goes from larger groups to Deuces, because we have a lot of, as you all know, there are a lot of long-time, people who we call them the beloveds, that return every year, and they come back to the island, and they think about it all year, and September is their time. And so I was really curious to see if that was going to happen again. And so there were some September nights where we had 31 Deuces. Now, that was not the case. That means that all 4 tops and 6 tops, many of them became Deuces, because that's just what the demand was. And what we would try to do is we would book, say, 10, and when I say 31, that means 2 seatings. So of the tables we had, that basically was like almost every table was a table for 2. So we were then again in a position where we were at 30% revenue or 50% revenue, depending upon what the table configuration had been previously. Conversely, the average check for those visitors that time of year is significantly higher, because those visitors tend to be diners, and so they tend to be really experiential. And for us, when we got into the takeout and we decided we were going to do takeout, again, we had to really think. We tried to stay in our lane, our onward forward facing lane of, we did our prefix, the surf and turf tasting menus, because we were turning away so many folks, as you said, we had a lot of guests who wouldn't dine out, and they really did not feel comfortable dining out because they had compromised family members. And so we wanted to bring the pearl to them. And so instead of us doing, dumplings or these things a la carte, which would have crushed our 4-person line, 100% brought down the entire dinner service. We thought about it a lot. We ended up doing the tasting menu takeaway, because we wanted to create an experience where the pearl could come to your home, and everything was done with such intention of that everything you opened, you would feel like you were in a restaurant. So it was 4 courses, and you could have this experience. And so that really, I know that that's something that we will continue with and expand for next year. And we did a lot of collaborations with different dynamics with the guest houses, with the inns, the hotels, and with longtime guests of ours that we had a relationship. Everything was trust economy, 100% this year. And I think that some of those single diners did have a hard time, but what we created, we had one table that we made as an intentional high top table that was at the base of the stairs. We called table 11. And we have one guest who's been a longtime guest, who's a widow, and she dined with us 3 nights a week on that table. And she would come in at 6 o'clock, and we knew that her dining experience would be about an hour and a half, which we were allowing 2 hours, then 15 minutes to sanitize, clean, turn the table, and prepare for the next guest. So we were unable to do 3 seatings, which is what we would normally do. So that again was an inventory challenge, but we knew that for sanitizing, we couldn't do it. So I think that thinking about like, what are those zones that replicate that feeling of a lot of those bar guests. We have one gentleman who, when he comes, he dines at the Pearl Bar every single night and has the same dinner every single night. And he's here usually for 7 nights. And at first I always thought it was an error in the book, but it's not. And we saw him this year, and he really struggled because his social interaction and his anxiety diminishment was because he would have that, he would be able to eat by himself, but not feel by himself. So in a time of like isolation and loneliness and depression, when people don't have that ability to dine at a bar, and our bars are dining bars, that's a real pickle right now. And we didn't do any bar set up dining at bars. We didn't put tables next to bars. We didn't do any of that. but that's something that's been on my list. So I'm definitely thinking about how can we address the needs of, a singular traveler, and to do something that would help them to feel like they can have an experience, because you can't do communal table at this point. So it'll be very fascinating to see what happens and how we can collaborate on that moving forward. And we would love to offer some things. And even if it is, as you said, partnering specifically on takeout that can come to an inn where someone might have, a beautiful outdoor space where someone may feel more comfortable and socially distanced in that outdoor space. How can we come to you and make it seamless for the innkeeper to offer hospitality? And I think those are some of those collaborations that can come out of this time.
Great, thank you.
Mary?
Angela, I have a question. Through all this, has there been any talk with your colleagues about maybe coming back together as a reinvented restaurant association? It seems with, Zoom, people can be anywhere, anytime, whatever. We've all gotten used to doing Zoom meetings, but usually, it would probably, I would assume, help the health department and the select board and us, if everyone could come together collaboratively.
Mm-hmm.
As you may remember, the
Yes.
associations usually get started when there's a crisis.
Absolutely.
And there's something that you want to, bring together. So I think in the next couple of months, that might be something that you and Orla and Alan and, and a few people could, come together and say, hey, as we move forward, so that the town can help the restaurants, and through the association, you can come with one voice, because I think your issues of sidewalk and whatever, it's relevant. I mean, Orla can't put anything on the sidewalk. The sidewalk's not even big enough there for people. So I think if that would ever be considered, it might be helpful for all of us, now that everyone's had at least one summer to look at the challenges, because my personal feeling is we're in this for a while, and probably through next season as well. So the more we can do, I will say the guest experience loved the outdoor dining. They loved the feel of it. We did have a lot of good weather nights in, July and August, but I know it was a scramble for you guys. So just food for thought that maybe now's the time for the group to come together again.
Well, I know Christy is on the call, and I just wanted to make sure to make note of, in a strange alignment, myself, Alan from Languedoc, Orla, Susan Handy from Black Eyed Susan, Shauna Claire, and David Silva from the Galley. We've had a group for the five of us. I don't know if it goes back 10 years. Our friendships go back way beyond that, but we have had a de facto group forever. And we meet regularly, we chat, we all own our real estate, and we feel that it was really important because there have been many unsuccessful attempts to organize an association. And I think part of the challenge is that there are so many different dynamics within and different issues for so many license holders because of the different types of venues that are there and the different issues that those venues face. And then the seasonality factor of many folks for a long time didn't live here, actually live in the community. And so they would be here for the summer season, and then they would either be going and working another season in another community and coming back. So just the connectiveness. So we had a meeting at the chamber, literally, I want to say, Christy would know specifically, but it was probably about 10 days or so before the lockdown, the shutdown. We went to the chamber saying that we wanted to form a restaurant group within the chamber, and we wanted to use the connectedness of the chamber as the lodging association type of model of we wanted to reform. And so we had that meeting right before everything went sideways, and then continued to, through the chamber, attempt to get the membership to be connected. And then everybody went into triage and went into trying to figure it out. So definitely it's something that, I'm very focused on and feel that collaboration is the key to our vitality, and that we're never going to be as successful as we could be if we're not collaborative and if we don't have an inclusive dialogue that includes all different perspectives and gives a voice. And then there can be subsets within that, because kind of the fine dining has very specific adaptation challenges right now. So I think it could be almost that there are, you know, different kind of subsets and then an overarching group. And part of the challenge is the schedule that we all have as well. It makes it very difficult. The fact I'm on an 8 a.m. Zoom is kind of stunning, because I always tell people it would be as if I, you know, kind of said, let's meet at 1:30 in the morning. When I finish up, let's have a quick call. But I think that this is important. This is vital. It's like beyond. I think that there'll be more openness, as you said. Chaos and crisis does bring a vulnerability for people, that they will put aside their kind of preconceived groups don't work or whatever. I don't understand it, because I've always felt that I'm always wanting to learn. And the only way you're going to learn is if you have conversations where you actively listen and hear what other people have to say. So I'm all for it, 100%, and we're trying.
Just a thought, because I think it would help planners,
100%.
not only for the town, but for the health department and even for us, as to how the whole group.
Absolutely.
But anyway, thanks.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. And the more restaurant folks that you all can voice that to and encourage to, you know, join forces, that's how it's going to happen.
I have a question. You talked about the outdoor dining being a game changer. From your perspective and from what you've heard, is it something that people would like permanently?
100%. But I think there has to be clarity. And I think, like with anything, and I kind of talked about the budgeting, and you know, Seth and I, we've always tried to be as adaptive as we can be. And this summer was no different. And I think for a lot of the newer businesses where they don't even have a rhythm of what they're doing, and then to have that thrown to them, I think there were some poor decisions being made in the beginning by some venues that really jeopardized all of us. And I think that a lot of those things were happening because everybody was just doing this on the fly. So can you imagine if we can all look at this in a planned out, intentional way and say, okay, you know, just as Sharon was saying, like let's look at like having stanchions, having things that delineate on the street, like this is a dining zone. And maybe some areas where you can't block off the street, maybe it's that you block off different sidewalks at different times of the evening, strategically, like say from 5:30 to midnight, this whole sidewalk can become a dining space versus taking an entire street. And I think that things like that could be done. And, you know, Amy was fantastic and really responsive and adaptive and committed to making all of this work. And there were, you know, really, I think everyone in town, I can't say anyone who I didn't get anything negative about the outdoor dining experience. I didn't hear from anyone. I think that it really, I think one of the things, lighting, Nantucket Tents did an extraordinary job really pivoting and evolving and adapting and supporting all of us. And it was the kind of thing where this wasn't competitive. I know when I put up the string lights in front of the boarding house and the Pearl area, I had, I would say, at least 12 messages within the first night from all different restaurants going, where'd you get them? Who put them up? How did this happen? And I had just copied my message finally, and I would just copy and paste it to everybody and say, you know, call Adam Weldy. I don't know if he's out of lights yet, but he'll totally. And Adam was right there. And I think there are a lot of unsung heroes during this time. And that's something that I'm really working on right now. Is my gratitude list is massive. And thinking about getting those folks all together in a way on a Zoom to really talk about what can we do moving forward? What are we seeing in other markets? You know, how am I going to utilize my 7,000 square foot building if I'm not going to be in an indoor dining lane? What are other businesses that I could potentially help And one of the things I really wanted to make sure to put out there, and it's not necessarily in order in this question, but there have been a lot of challenges, I know, for the Lodging Association of restaurants being open. And part of that has evolved. I was year round for 14 years, which I know some of us remember, and boarding house was like Cheers. It was truly like this year round gathering space. And then there was a winter where we had 9 storms, 9 weekends in a row. And I no longer remember the year, which means I've healed from it, which is a good thing. But because of the way the licenses are structured, it is not viable for most restaurants to be open year round because of the way the licenses are written. It's really punitive, and then it creates a situation where people just end up closing for longer than they're permitted to close. I think there's an opportunity right now to get rid of the year round and the seasonal license. And if everyone just had a license, this winter is a great example. We have people approaching us who would like us to do different dinners for them, to do different things. We're selling our t-shirts and cookies and some of our sauces last weekend when people were doing that stuff. There are things people would do more if they had possibility for the whole winter of what, if you could just be open as a business as if you were in the United States of America on the mainland and you had a license and you opened and closed as your business saw fit, you would find more people would be open and more people would start looking at the possibilities because that's the way things work. But if it becomes this seasonal, people are going to close more than they are if there's the possibility. And I think that that's something that could be a game changer for restaurants. And we've requested and mentioned to Amy and to a couple other people in town that it would really be, we get inspected, the whole disconnects between seasonal and year round. The seasonal year round difference in the way the license is written right now is crazy. So it's January 15th, you can stay open until, and then you can open March 1st. That's what a seasonal license is. And a year-round license, if you close for more than 4 weeks, you have to ask for permission. So I think that really making there be some, even playing field for everybody, more people would be inclined to then open up at different times that made sense for their business model. And like Seth and myself, if we're here, we could open up and do things on a small scale that would be very mom and pop, like what we used to do when we had the boarding house before, things became more, this is what you have to do and this is what you are not allowed to do. So I think that could be really interesting along with the outdoor dining.
Josh,
Sorry.
Josh, I just have one follow-up question. I think that raises a whole other issue too about your liquor license on a public street.
Yeah.
All of this is going to have to be looked at, the liability issue for the town, because right now, the public street is not your premises.
Correct.
So I think, there's a whole other discussion about licenses and what's allowed and what isn't. But
well, and I think definition of bars has to be really examined, and as we get to a point and just real clarity, because I think there were some because everyone's figuring it out. I don't think necessarily things were intentionally being done, but I think that there was a lot of vulnerability that if there was clarity, that vulnerability wouldn't have been so much of a challenge, or there wouldn't have been so many guest inconsistencies, because as we all know, if you have one experience one place, it's like playing your parents off of each other. You have one experience one place and this seems to be okay and safe and permitted. And then you go to another place where it's hyper focused on every protocol. I had guests coming in and telling me, oh, well, when I was at such and such, that I was allowed to have 7 people at a table, or I was allowed to do this and I was allowed to do that. And that puts me in an awful position, because many of these properties are also, not just friends, but many of them are alumni of ours. So I'm trying to say, that doesn't sound correct. And then I'm in a position where, like, now am I following up? Is this my role within this? And it's all happening while you're totally understaffed and trying to just keep everybody on the focus. So, I think, yes, the liability was a big concern. And I think that, that has to be really defined. And then just the expectations of the guests need to be really clear, and their experience needs to be consistent.
Can you speak to, while we're on this subject, I've just been wondering a bit more about alcohol sales for you guys and what your experience was. I know it's a little bit different, and my guess would be that with the fine dining, that you guys maybe suffered less of a loss than, you know, the more casual restaurants that are so, you know, drink only oriented. But could you just speak a little bit to how you felt like it affected the industry period, and, you know, how you could see maybe it moving forward if there is still the, which I agree. I mean, the second that somebody has a drink, they want to take off their mask. So I completely agree that it could be the way it has been. And I think you did a great job. But how you could maybe see it moving forward if this continues into next season?
I think that's going to be the big puzzle. One of the biggest parts of the puzzle is going to be really the evolution for spaces that were really bar centric. And, you know, it's like we've done so many versions of ourselves in the last 29 years between the boarding house and the Pearl, and then having Corazon for the time we had Corazon. I think we're at like 58 seasonal restaurant openings and closings between the three spots. So there's a lot of information we have. Much of it is no longer valid, unfortunately, as we evolve. But I think your question is really interesting because for us, we actively stepped away from the bar aspect of hospitality 5 years ago. And we made a conscious decision to start closing. We were already in Cinderella mode. We were in the midnight closure zone and doing those things because we were seeing an alarming increase in behaviors that we felt we could not navigate. And that was something we're also in our later 50s and going to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning and having nonsensical conversations with entitled humans was really not all that appealing. It never really was, but there was a different vibe. There was a light switch that shifted about 5 years ago. And for us, it was tactile. And so we felt that we were already in a lane where that part of our business, yes, there was a lot of financial capture, but the stress and the anxiety and the liability were not worth it to us or interesting. And so I think that it'll be interesting to see. Wine is a huge aspect of who we are and what we do, and because we do experiential dining, and we do a lot of private dining because of the private dining rooms we had, and we had to totally reimagine all of that and take that out of the equation. So for us, the bar dining was a huge hit, losing the bar dining, because we would do 3 seatings a night at our bar and people would reserve that because, again, people knew it was a great way for a single person to come. Tons of people have met, I can't even tell you how many people have met their partners sitting at the boarding house or the Pearl. The list is bonkers. But I think that where this is going to be the real challenge is for our colleagues that have 50-50 revenues, where they have alcohol revenues to food revenues that are 50-50. Those spots probably saw a 20% of that 100% of the alcohol version. I think 20% would probably be about the capture most places saw, particularly when people started following the guidelines. And so that's devastating. And that's something, so it's complete, bartenders are having an extinction moment in their industry. So that is a huge thing. And this island has been very bar centric for a very long time. And those personalities have been a lot of the fabric of our community. And, going to see this person and going to see that person. I mean, that all ended this year. There was none of that. So there was, we have guests that were just here that came for the first time in September, and they wrote me a 2-page letter about, how much they loved their experience with us, and then how disconnected they felt afterwards because they couldn't go across the street and say hi, to Jody and to Matt, or do this. And these are, folks in my age range that, that's what they love to do, is it became part of their social dynamic. So I think that's a big part of this puzzle. And then there's a lot of tax revenue that comes from all of these restaurants and all of this because we have the percentage tax that's on all the transactions. So there are real ramifications to the changes and shifts in our industry that will affect the town's budget, that will affect the guest experience. But I think conversely, there's a silver lining that I think with the diminishment of some of the alcohol sales, I think there's a wellness component that comes with that. And I think that there is a diminishment of some of the public safety issues that come from the climate that was evolving. So it's really complex, and it's an interesting question because I've spent so much time thinking about that and just like repurposing how are restaurants going to be designed in the future as bars present really unique challenges. And there are some restaurants here that have enormous bar components in their physicality, not just their business model, but their physicality is a huge bar. And then it's got some tables. So it's a wild time.
Without, revealing anything personal, do you feel like, from conversations you've had, do you feel like next spring is going to look a lot different than it looks right now as far as people reopening? I mean, we're going to lose some folks, you think, this off season?
I think that if the Restaurant Relief Act, if the HEROES Act does not pass, and if the inertia in Washington does not improve, there are going to be some extinction moments. And I know there are already, obviously I'm in a unique situation because of our, relationship to so many of the operators that are here. And, it's everyone. I've reached out to our network and I've told everybody, it's like, please call, please don't wait till the last minute. Let me know what's going on. How can we help? How can we support? I think we have a really incredibly generous community. And I know that one of the things a lot of our longtime, guests have said is, if there's anybody in peril, let me know. How can I help? What can I do to support? I think there are going to need to be a lot of businesses that have a lot of partners are going to have a lot of challenges and that don't own their real estate. So even those of us that own our real estate, this is, it's
right.
Inconceivable.
Right.
And totally inconceivable what we're all facing. So as I've said in many of the things I've talked about publicly, if we're having a hard time, if we're concerned, man, that canary has been dead for days. So I think about that a lot, that, it's like after 29 years, if we feel that this might not be viable any longer,
yeah.
How are people going to do it who have, 4 or 5 or 12 partner investors, or have, are unable to get a bank loan, can't qualify for this PPP, whatever you want to, the IDLs, all the different things. I know a lot of people who haven't been able to get funding, or that they can't get a note, period. And forget, like, how's someone going to qualify for a mortgage right now, to have a home on the island? I mean, there's the layers of and echoes and shadows from this it's a very, very, very big abyss for people in my industry. So
you are a critical industry.
Yeah.
For the
And it's
survival
really,
of the island.
it's a tipping point. And I think that's where, again, I have such gratitude for, meetings like this and the collaboration with the town, and just really like shifting the dialogue away from, the disconnects in perception of our industry to really talking about how can we create something moving forward that can make things more vital. And it'll be interesting to see with what some of the larger property owners do to create a reset for tenants. I think that's really going to be vital. That will be the game changer for everyone to see what's going to happen. Now, I don't think you're going to see in the past, anytime a property was coming up or even rumored to come up, all of us would get calls of, hey, do you want to do another restaurant? My conversation was epically short. It was like, no, thank you. thank you for considering us. No, thank you. No, thank you. And I think that uniformly, I don't know anyone who's looking to do another restaurant this year. So if you think of that, I think that while there may be, what I would hope is that because that is the truth of this time, that hopefully tenants who are in places will be given more buoyancy because of that, because there isn't a list of people that have said, hey, if that property is ever available, I want it. But this is a stress point as well. And I think there's something that has to be said about that. And without getting into individual spaces, this puts strain on all relationships this time. And so partnerships, people who have, you know, businesses together that are complicated. I mean, it's enough to have a partnership with your, you know, 30+ year partner. But when you have a lot of different families that are trying to be supported by one small business model, and as you know, Thayer was asking, like when you take out a big revenue source, you take out the bar source, so you don't have that, and then you're trying to support multiple households out of one business model. That's pretty terrifying. And then you take out the revenues that would happen from different milestone weekends that people count on. It's really, and then it impacts every industry. So I have zero answers about that. But I know that it's going to be a really, really dark time ahead, literally and figuratively, for hospitality.
I have a logistics question for David before we go back to the conversation. Are we on till 9:30? Because I saw
Yes.
Landmark House came in and don't know if they're,
Yeah, I don't know what that's about. That may be it, but just,
okay.
Any other questions for Angela?
I just want to thank you for coming on and getting up early this morning. Share your perspective with us. It's very, very enlightening. And I hope, as Mary mentioned and you alluded to, that you're going to be able to get the restaurateurs together and do some brainstorming on how the town can help and how we can all pull together and navigate next season. I think on the hospitality side, the number of available seats that were very limited this season that Karen and I both struggled with, it's going to be possibly even worse next season if restaurants aren't able to survive. And I mean, you raised so many interesting issues. I would love to have, you know, I'm not a restaurateur, but I would love to be involved in any conversation that you had with the restaurateurs, because I have the other side of the perspective. So,
Well, I think that's the thing, Sharon. I think that, and I know that you have other things on your agenda, but you can see from this conversation the amount of things where there are overlaps, and those overlaps can dovetail, and that's what's going to create strength in the fabric of our community, is when we all can dovetail together. And when we have clear understandings and empathy for what's happening, that's where all the magic can happen during this time, is we can really create collaborative moments where, you know, I had proposed in the beginning of all this that we play music throughout the town one day a week, and that we have the music center, you know, curate a music program, and maybe it plays through Dreamland, and maybe you could have live music coming from the deck at Dreamland, and it could be like, there's an event that happens in Beaune in France. Zero bandwidth to have any kind of reality activation, but those are the things during the winter. Wouldn't it be amazing to talk about, like, how could we turn up the charm during this time and really create, you know, atmosphere?
well, I love brainstorming.
That.
So
And I think that those are all the possibilities that when we're not, you know, faced with, you know, just day-to-day survival, then we can start shifting into a thriving mode where this is going to be an altered, you know, reality of the past. But if we can start focusing on the future, I think we all have so much to offer to each other, and to, I never feel like the best idea or the only voice in the room is going to get us to a place of real true magic. And this is a time for the light makers among us to, like, really say, like, hey, you know what? Let's go for the supernova. Let's let go of the things that weren't serving the community, that were chaotic and that had a lot of unintended consequences. And now how can we think about reimagining this next moment for the island and for our children? And, you know, my kids were born here. I'm very vested in what happens moving forward. And I think there's a lot of talented people on this island that are very collaborative. So I appreciate being part of the dialogue, and thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Angela.
Thank you, Angela.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Jan, I don't have a copy of the itinerary in front of me. Could you, it's just old business next?
It's my report and then David's, and then we're done.
Perfect, thank you.
So I'm going to be quick because Christy and I both have to go to another meeting shortly after this one. So the three things that I wanted to mention was that I have submitted my budget proposal for FY22. It's level funded as to this year, and those are the instructions that we got. We moved a little bit of money back and forth, but no significant increases or additional requests this year. Plus our expenses went way down because we only brought on 3 part-time staff and didn't do anything at Children's Speech. So that sort of reflects, if we get hit with a budget cut, it's going to be in that area. The discussion about the New Year's Eve fireworks is coming up before the select board a week from tomorrow. And I don't know where we're going to go with that discussion based on the recent surge, but I wanted you to know that that is on the agenda. And I am really starting to work on the Nantucket Cultural District and how it's getting integrated into my office and the daily routine, working with, I'm putting together a new kind of executive group to kind of brainstorm what it is we think that the new cultural district should look like when we go through with our redesignation next year. I'll give you a heads up that we're looking to find more ways to promote collaboration between cultural organizations and businesses, or individuals in cultural organizations. And we're really looking to enhance the expression of different diverse communities in the cultural district. So trying to diversify our group in order to achieve that. I think that's been the biggest challenge, is the difficulty of having an authentic conversation on Zoom with people that you haven't met yet, to say, what's your culture and how can we help express it? So trying to find ways to work around that. So that's sort of one other thing. The survey that went out from the Economic Recovery Task Force in late September, we got the preliminary results on Friday. We're having our initial review with the consultants about that tomorrow afternoon, and I'll be talking about it a little bit tomorrow night at the select board. Any questions for me?
No, that all sounds great.
Thanks.
David?
Okay. I just want to mention that for September, we had 1,162 people in the office, and that compared to last year, that's obviously very off. But weekly restaurant list downloads continues to be strong. We had 5,400 downloads compared to about 1,800, 1,900 last year at the same time. So everything else is kind of off, but just the popularity of the restaurant list. And so that's really all I have at this point. I do want to mention that we are going to be operating Monday through Friday now that the off season is here. We'll be closed on Saturday and Sunday, and it'll be just Janet and I for the most of the winter. And that next week we may be, Janet, I'm not sure if this might happen, but we may be closed off and on because we're going to be doing HVAC work in the office starting Monday. So we'll see how that goes. We're getting new ductless air conditioning in all the buildings, so hopefully we don't have to use the units in the windows, and those are kind of loud, right, Janet?
Oh God, yeah.
So
Well, I'm working
anyway,
from home
that's
today.
all I have.
Do we have our next date set yet? Okay.
The 17th of November.
I think it's 16th, but I'll check that with you later on.
Okay. Perfect.
It's a week later than normal because of vacation schedules and
All right.
scheduling this Zoom thing. As you can see, I think we have some overlap in the Zoom meeting room number 3. So
So we can end if you guys are all set, I can motion to adjourn. All
Can I
right,
ask one question first?
sure. Karen?
Yeah, David, are you keeping a list of the hotels and the inns that are closing and or will be open for the whole winter?
Yeah, I'm working on that. It's a moving target, so to speak,
Right.
but I should have more. I'm getting a lot of information this week, and I will share that with you as soon as I feel comfortable with, all the info I've got.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, motion to adjourn.
So move.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.